Today we're gonna go over just starting up a brand new Python Django project. We're just gonna do a very simple app, just something that displays the time. We're not gonna have any database integration, no models or anything like that. So again, this is just gonna be very basic and simple. So we'll just go over the directories and some of the commands you need to go through to start up. So first thing we need to do with Python, we usually work in virtual environments. So I have one for Django, so what I have to do is first navigate to where I store all of those environments, which I believe, yep, it's going to be in this file here. If we look in here, you can see I have a few different environments. One I was doing for Flask. We're working with Python 2, so it's going to be this first Django environment. So activate that. We just do source Django bin/activate. Okay, if you notice now to the left of our command line here, we got Django NB. So we are now in our environment, free to navigate around our computer and do whatever we need to do. So I'm just going to go back up to the root, go into my desktop, and in there I have a demo folder where I'm just going to store all my projects I demo. Start up the basic Django app. First thing we need to do is run the command Django-admin start project, and what are we going to call this? Let's just call this time display. Yeah, time display. Okay, enter. And we didn't see anything happen, but let's just get a list and notice now there's time display. What that did was create this folder with our project name. I'll go ahead and just drag it into my editor here so we can open up the directory. So this is the whole project. It creates a folder inside there with the same name as the project name, and this has all of the main files for the whole project. And this manage.py file, it's got just the basic stuff. This is the file that runs the server, so we're gonna look into this a little bit later. But inside here we've got some basic ones. We've got a settings file, URLs file. We'll go through all of that here in just a little bit. So first I need to add a couple things. So in this time display project, we are going to add a folder called apps, and that's just going to contain our different applications. Like I said, today's is just going to be simple. It's only going to contain one, so it may seem like a little bit of overkill, but in the real world your projects are going to be a lot bigger and it will not be so much overkill. So first thing we need to do is go into this project, and now that we're in it, you can see the folder and file that I showed you in the editor. And we are going to create a new folder for apps. And here, let me move this to the side so you'll see as we're doing things in here, it'll automatically show up here. So there's the apps. We don't need that right now. So let's go into that apps folder. And we're going to need a couple things. First of all, this apps folder, it's going to be technically a module that we need access to it when we work with our settings and all the stuff in our main project. So in order for Python to recognize it as such, it needs one of these init.py, dunder init, that's just double underscore init.py files. So since we're inside the apps folder, let's just go ahead and create that file. And there's absolutely nothing in it. It's just a blank file. The name of the file is all Python needs to know. Hey, this is a module. We can import stuff. Okay, and see, there it is right there. Now we want to actually create our application. To do that, Django has a command called start app, but we need this manage.py file to run that. Without it, it won't know how to start app. But we want to create the new application inside of this apps folder. So to do that, first we call Python, and now we need to call the manage.py, but it's not in our current directory. So we just need to back one up. Oops, manage.py and start app, and let's just call this time app. So do that, and notice this just created a new folder called time app. This is our application. If we open this up, There's a whole bunch of things in here. There's a folder for migrations. That's going to have to do with database. We won't deal with that today. Here's init.py. For some reason, when we made the apps folder, we did it ourselves, so that's why there was nothing in it. Here, because we used the start app Django command, it automatically created the init.py for us, and a bunch of other stuff, models. That's going to have to do with database. We'll ignore that for now. Views.py. This will be our what's known in every other framework in the world practically is a controller, but Django likes to be different. So anyway, we'll use that here in just a little bit. So I think we're pretty much, there's nothing, we probably don't need to do anything with that anymore. So let's go into our files and start working in it. First thing we need to do, since we create a new application, let's go into our main project settings file. And if we scroll down a little bit, you'll see this section called installed apps. And so this time app is an app. It is now installed. Therefore, we need to add it to this list. Don't worry about what these other things are. So let's just go ahead inside of this list of installed apps, add apps, which refers to this .time app. Okay, and then because this is a list, do not forget this little comma. I've forgotten that several times, and then it reads through all these, and anyway, cause errors. So don't forget the little comma. Okay, so save that settings.py file. All right, and now let's open up our URLs. URLs kind of makes sense. Has to do with the routing. URL is obviously what you see in our browser. This is what's commonly referred to as URL bar. So it kind of makes sense, has to do with routing. So in here, we need to do a couple things. So our application is going to basically handle its own routing. So we're going to define what to do whenever it goes to a certain route. But when the server runs, it always catches this main one first. So basically, we just want to tell this main routing file to just go ahead and include the routing file from our application, which we haven't made that yet, but we will. So what we do in here, just add, actually we don't, just to make things less complicated, we don't even need that URL admin thing right now. Okay, so this is the pattern we're looking for, and it is just going to be, and this probably Django uses regex. So this upper caret just means anything, no end of string, so it just says anything that goes to this server. Let's just go ahead and include apps.time app, which is this, because we're outside this folder, so it's going back here to that, and we're going to create a urls.py file. So when we're including the .py, we don't need to add the .py extension. That's all we need right there. So let's go ahead and save this. Actually, I'm missing one thing. With Django, you tend to need to import a lot of things. So whenever you're using something like, see, we're using this include, it's obviously a function. If you look at the rest of this file, an include isn't anywhere. So Django, right now, if we ran this, it's going to give us an error because it's going to say, what the heck is this include? It's something that is inside this Django conf URLs, which I just already know. So we just need to add that to the list of things we import. That way, it knows what the heck this include even means. Okay, now we can save that. Alright, and this is a similar pattern to what we're going to use in our application's URL.py file, so I'm just going to go ahead and copy that. Okay. Okay, so here, inside of time app, let's go ahead and create that urls.py file. And okay, so here it is. So this is the file that we just previously included. Let me paste in this. We kind of need it. A couple things are different though. So we're no longer including, but we are using this URL right here. We still need to use that, so we'll leave that import. But now this routing, the way it works is it's going to catch a route based on a regex, and then it's going to say, hey, go to this method inside the views file, and in order to do that, it needs to know, well, what is this views file? It won't know that, so that's just something else we're going to have to import. So we'll add that up here. Okay. And it's from dot because right now we are in this file, and what we're importing from is this file. So it's in the same directory. That's why I just simply dot. So this importing is importing this file here. So we're just going to say when we get just root. So we'll just do end of string. That just regex end of string. When we get the root route, we are going to go into the views file, and we'll just make an index method. Pretty standard. Here we can, if we had additional routes, this is where all of your routing for application is. So let's just say, for example, you had a route that went to show. That's a common one, or where you show something. So you would just do something like this. So then this would pick out anytime the URL route goes to show, and then say it would go to something like that. So you can have as many routes as you need within here, but we don't need it. Again, this is more for just going through the steps to set up a Django application. So that's all we're going to have. Just that one. Go to views index. Let's save this. Okay, so we pretty much should have most of our stuff set up here. Let's go to views. Okay. So this is our controller. This is what's going to have all of the logic. So, which it says, create your views right here. Django already created some things like from Django.shortcuts, import render. Because the whole purpose of this file is to do some logic and then render some template, because the user has to see something. So we know we're going to render something here. Now earlier in the urls.py, if you remember, our root route goes to an index method. We don't have one yet, so let's go ahead and create it. And one thing to know about Django, there's going to be a request object. You'll get more familiar with it when we deal with forms, because you'll be passing form data through this request object, similar to what request is in other languages if you work with them. So we need to make sure we pass that in, and then we'll just do pass right now. That way it knows this function exists. Let us just go ahead and run the server. Let's make sure that so far we got everything that we need. So I do need my terminal. Pull that back up. Clear this out. Okay, now we want to make sure we are in the same directory that contains our manage.py file. So I said earlier, this runs a server. We're not in it right now, so let's back up. And okay. Here it is, manage.py. So we're in the right directory now. And to start the server, we just simply type python manage.py run server. And hopefully no errors. Alright, looks like we're all good to go. Don't be worried about this red stuff right now. I know red is usually bad. We're not dealing with databases or anything like that. But what this is saying is we have some unapplied migrations, and project might not work until we apply it. It'll work for us because what it's saying is it's not going to work for this admin, auth, content type sessions. Now come and play later, so I'm sure everybody hopefully has heard of sessions. None of these will work. We're not using them right now, so we don't really have to worry about that. But then you notice here, time date started, Django version, starting server at localhost port 8000, and hey, tells us how to quit it out when we want to stop. So let's just go ahead, go to our browser, go to localhost 8000. Oh, we got some kind of errors, but that's okay. If our server wasn't running, we would have one of those cannot find server, some other kind of error. So at least now we know our server is running. It's just saying, let's see, the views.index didn't return an HTTP response object, return none instead. What it's saying is this is a browser. It expects a template. It expects when we typed in localhost 8000, it made an HTTP request to the server saying, "Hey, I'm requesting this web page, whatever it may be." And the server never sent one back. And that's why this is getting this error, but it knows that we're running in Django, so it still displays all that. Okay, so let's go ahead and fix some of this stuff. We're going to need a couple more things inside of this time display app. The first thing, the most important thing, is going to be a templates folder. And as you hopefully have guessed, this is what's going to contain all of our view files, our HTML files. So inside this folder, usually what you want to do, it just kind of convention, you can put the HTML files directly in here, or just for a little bit more organization, I had a folder with the name of the application that everything belongs to, just to keep things a little more organized. And now in here, we will create our index.html file. Save that. Yes, I know. Okay. And let's just create a very basic HTML thing here. So Django start project demo. Sure. Whatever. That doesn't really matter anyway. So, and we can always just do our typical hello world. And now right now this is not being rendered yet because we don't need that. Because in here when we got this route we just passed. We didn't actually do anything. So let's go ahead and return something. We're going to return, what are we returning? Render, which is this. This render method basically says where to go to find things. We need to pass in that request object again, even if we're not doing anything with it. And now we need to say which file we want to render. Now, we don't need to specify that it's in a templates folder because this render method already knows to look, hey, look for a templates folder. So if we named this something different, like template or HTML files, whatever, you'd get an error because it's like, hey, I don't know where to look. I'm looking for templates. I can't find it. So that's why we have to call it templates. Since I did create a folder inside of it, I do have to reference that though. And okay, there we go. Return render. So hopefully now this will render this file, which just says hello world. And there it is. Okay. So just add a little more complexity to this. I said we were starting a little time display type app. So let's do this. So how can we get a date and time from Python? Well, let's take a look. You can see it's already got some memory of things I've searched before. So look at Python 2.7, date time. And okay, so here we got datetime object. I'm not gonna like go through all these docspirit, in detail. Just showing you this so you know where to look. And this is what I'm going to use, datetime.datetime, because it displays year, month, day, hour, minute, everything. You also have one that just does date, one that just does time. So let's just go ahead and do that. Now this datetime is a module. And as we know with modules, we have to import them, even if they are already included in Python. And you see this is the Python standard library. So that means this already comes with Python. But even though it comes with it, we have to specify, hey, we want to use it. So we're going to say from datetime, import datetime. Seems redundant, but that's what it says. Okay. Okay, so what we're going to do here is create an object that we're going to pass to our template to use to display. We'll just call it context. That's usually what it's called. I mean, in reality, you can call it whatever the heck you want. And since we're at time, we'll give it variable time. So key of time. Notice this is just simply a Python dictionary. That's all it is, aka object. And what is time going to be? Well, it's going to be this date time. And there's a method on it called .now, and that's all it is. And then, so when we render this template, we just want to pass that object. So let's save that. And just to make sure, why don't we take a look? What is context? So let's print context. I like to print a lot of things. This helps out just so you know what data you're dealing with, and let's print out specifically the context time. So let's go ahead and save that. Refresh this. Nothing happened here because we didn't do anything with our template file. But take a look at this. Here, I'll pull this up so we can see what we're seeing. So this, you can see the server's running. It ran this file when we went to the page in the browser, and when it ran this method, we had some print commands, and these print commands print to the console server. So this is context. See, here's the time object. This is kind of a funky output, but it doesn't matter. All you know is, if you notice, it does have some. So here's 2017 3/20. That's today's date. 16/2/38. I have not adjusted for time zones, so this is probably like UTC or something like that, because it is not 4:02 right now. It's 11:02. Well, 11:03 now, which is what, 5 hours? And I think Central Time Zone is 5 hours off from UTC, so that sounds right. Okay, then just to show where we are, printed those. But now we print, this is a funny thing, we printed the time key of context, and you would think that it would give us this, but Python actually interprets that line into something that makes a little bit more sense. So that looks more like a date, that looks more like a time. Okay, anyway, so we got what we want. We're gonna pass that to the template file. So let's now go to that, and in here it's hello world. Your UTC time is, and let's just do, you know what, time should be bigger, so let's just do that 3 1. There we go. And we'll just simply display. Now we're passing a context object, but we don't need to refer the name of the object. We can just refer to the actual keys. So let's just say time. That's it. Let's see what it outputs. All right. Refresh. Bam! Look at that. This is kind of interesting though. So notice before context, this is what it is. Print just a time key and you get this. But now their templating engine for Django interprets this object instead of how the way Python does. It actually makes it kind of user-friendly. We can probably manipulate that some more, but that's beyond the scope of what we're doing today, so I'm not going to bother with that. Because honestly, that looks pretty good. So, okay. One more thing I want to show is this is pretty ugly. Obviously, you're going to want to style things. With Django, it works a little bit differently. You can't just put a style.css file next to the index and then call on it like you normally would. Inside the time app, we have our templates folder. We also want to create a folder called static. And this folder is where we would save all our style sheets, images, JavaScript files, all your static files. Same convention I always use. I also add another folder within it with the name of the application. Now in this case, because we have multiple types of static files, I normally make a folder for CSS, then another folder for JavaScript, another folder for images. I won't make those. I'm not going to add any images or add JavaScript. So let's just do a basic style.css. I won't do any crazy styling. Let's just apply everything, do like a normalize, and margin 0, semicolon, padding 0, and just so that we can see something, let's make all the text color green. Okay. So if all we did was the old version of linking a style sheet and then backed up, backup actually looks like 2, then go to static, then time app, then CSS, then style.css, you would think, okay, this is how it normally works, right? Oh, look at that. It does work like that. What do you know? Okay. You know what? I never tried doing it that way. Normally you shouldn't do it like that. So let me show you the proper way to do it, even though that did work. Okay, so what you normally want to do is put some Python code in here to load static files. And I've also seen you do it load static or load static files from static, some things like that. So I just do load static files. And then inside of here, let's go ahead and move this over. Python code. And we're going to say href, it comes from static. And now write out where in static. And that's in the time app folder. That has the CSS folder. that has a style.css file. Save, and everything still works. So there you go. That's all we're going to get into today. So just starting up a Django application, and this is, take note of this directory structure. That's essentially how it's put up. So I will add more demo videos in the future. It gets a little bit more complex. I do already have another one that is a basic CRUD example, brings in a database. So yeah, leave me any questions if you got any.